Thank you. And I do have to say, I have a wonderful co-chair as well, and the members of this caucus are true leaders on a variety of issues that are so important to the workers of the state. I'm the daughter of a first responder. My father's been a volunteer firefighter my entire life. So I grew up very cognizant of the issues that first responders face. There are a variety of bills in session this year to address this issue. Several provisions are in HB 5003, which is the House Priority Bill for Workforce Development, and we do want to highlight some individual bills as well. HB 5279 is an act adding witnessing a serious physical injury as a qualifying event for workers' compensation to PTSI coverage. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a medical condition, and what we've found in the legislature is that it is addressed as if it is a political matter that takes the actual medical issue out of it, and that's wrong. In my district, there was an incident where we had a longtime officer on his way to a roadwork job at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday morning, half awake, sipping his coffee at a stoplight, headed to work, and suddenly someone was banging on his window, wildly screaming that somebody was after him. The officer got out of his car and said, "What's going on here?" The man was having a psychiatric episode, pulled out a gun and started shooting at traffic, hitting cars in a busy intersection, and then turned the gun at the officer's face. That officer was left no other choice. He had to take his gun out, and he did use it. But because he did not kill that individual, because he did not maim him, he did not meet the threshold for PTSD coverage, even though that officer unfortunately did develop PTSD from the incident. That officer, in a moment's notice, went from a sleepy morning headed to an easy job to having his life threatened, and then rendering medical care to the individual to not only save their life but make sure they didn't have permanent damage. And because that person did not die, that officer can't get coverage, and that's wrong. So we support that bill in order to right this wrong. There was another terrible incident in Bridgeport where an officer had been stabbed, and while she could get coverage because she was injured, her coworkers who saved her life could not. And this really needs to be corrected as soon as possible. We can't let politics get in the way of good common sense to support our first responders. Additionally, we want to highlight an act concerning health insurance coverage. Oh, we already discussed that one for Becca. And we also want to discuss an act establishing a tax credit for volunteer firefighters who meet certain service requirements. Right now in the state of Connecticut, we do provide a property tax that towns can opt into for volunteer firefighters that meet certain criteria for attending calls and doing the real work for the community, because volunteers are doing real work and saving towns a lot of money. However, that tax credit is really only truly effective if you own a home, because it applies to property taxes, right? And if you don't own a lot of property, then it doesn't really apply to you. So we're proposing a tax credit on the income tax for those who don't qualify for the property tax credit, or who don't have property, to make sure that we're getting compensation to our volunteers regardless of whether or not they're fortunate enough to be able to afford a home in this job climate. I also want to discuss some of the trades bills. We have an act authorizing the comptroller to withhold payment for violations of the prevailing wage statutes. To put it simply, when folks are violating the law, we should not be giving them compensation for that. We should be putting our foot down in the state of Connecticut and saying that you respect our laws, or you don't get payment. Additionally, we have an act concerning the Troops to Trades initiative, making sure that our troops are being given job training opportunities to get into the trades, and an act concerning crane workers, crane operators, and hoisting equipment operators. This is really about making the work environment safer. As it currently stands in state law, the state can stop work orders if you are not complying with your license. However, if you don't have a license, they cannot stop the job, and that makes absolutely no sense. It makes it less safe on the job, and there's a quick way we can fix that with this provision, which is both a standalone bill in 5405, and we are hoping to see in HB 5003.